Thank you for tuning into our podcast. We are coming to you from Chicopee, Massachusetts. I am your host, Carrie, and joining me is Holyoke's very own local historian and creator of the historical tours of Greater Holyoke, Robert Camus. He offers both public and private tours, as well as presentations of the local canal systems, reservoirs, cemeteries, and churches, as well as various parks and streets in Holyoke, South Hadley, and Chicopee, Mass. Now you actually lead these tours and give these presentations yourself, is that correct?
This used to be visible on my walking tour of the canals, but now it's down.
And so today he'll be educating us on the Albion paper mill. So tell us of the early history of the Albion.
The Albion paper mill was a mill that was made in the year 1869 after the Civil War. And we're going to discuss its history here, but we're also going to discuss what production was like inside the mill. It was an enormous mill that grew and grew, and what they made there, where it was, and then what happened to it in recent years. It's gone. So we have a lot to talk about. But Daniel Newton, the contractor of the four Newton brothers that came to Holyoke, he made great buildings. He was one of two brothers of that Newton brothers that were into construction, the other John. And the other two brothers, James and Moses, were more into finance, into running businesses. But Daniel Newton, he made the Albion. Now, it had to come off a design. It came off a design by David Tower, who designed, with his brother Ashley Tower, most of the mills around Holyoke. He came to Holyoke himself in the year 1867. This is one of his first works ever. And a great job he did. He used to have a big bandsaw to it. It used to be a very large mill along the northern part of Canal Street. Now, the early history includes lots of production, and they were owned by two brothers. Brothers' names were Edward C. Taft. He was the treasurer mostly, and Calvin Taft. He was the president mostly. And their sister was married to James Newton, so the families were tied together. And they also made a beautiful castle, or a building in Holyoke Castle. It was called the Kenilworth Castle on, at that point, the north edge of Holyoke. It's not there anymore. Sadly, it's gone, but it was a beautiful place. And we're going to talk about, during this talk, a lot of production. The mill itself was one of the biggest paper mill production sites. It wasn't the absolute biggest, but it specialized along the way. We'll talk about those products.
And what was the Albion like in terms of production?
Okay. For production inside of it, they used the upper floors for the start of what they made. They made very fine paper, a lot of book paper, a lot of colored paper. And if you're talking about the Albion, mostly think of colors, because they put lots of different colors on lots of different papers. That's where part of the reason why they're so big, and they got bigger, because they were colored paper a lot. Okay, and this mill was, for the most part, 2 floors high, but it had another upper gabled floor that they did some work in. And what did they do? In the upper floors, of course, they started with the rag material, and they were making cotton paper. And up there, they'd go through it and screen through it, or comb through it, and try to get the finished product. Now, most of the rough production happened on the first level, and it happened towards the back. So the engine rooms were towards the back. Remember, this is on the second level canal, going into the river. The drop would have been about, at that point, about 20 feet or so. And so they had the engine rooms back there, but right to its side, it has 3 Fourdrinier machines, and they were in the part of the mill that were coming forwards towards Canal Street. So the engine rooms were in the back, in a piece that paralleled the river, and the Fourdrinier were coming forwards. And there you would make a Fourdrinier machine is basically where you mass produce the paper. You take in the cotton, put in inside of it some paste, basically plant-based paste called engine size. It's called engine size as a term. And towards the front there, you then get the finished product. You dry it a bit, and then towards the sides, you'd have rooms where you put the colors on it. Now, the mill changed during the years. When it first opened in 1869, it was a lot smaller, and most of the production happened towards the back. But through the years, it grew and grew to be a great-looking mill. And through the years, of course, they changed some of the things, but mostly it was what they changed in the beginning. The storage rooms in the back got larger and larger, and you have to store it twice because the raw products come in the back on one railroad line, and there was no front railroad line here, so all the finished pieces would go in the back. And so once you've done all production, first and second floor, or second and first floor, you then bring them towards the back, and there were stock houses and storage rooms ready for the train to bring them out. Right? And the whole storage areas grew greater and greater through the many years. Now you're doing lots of dyeing, and everyone would tell me of older people in Holyoke that, oh, the canals would turn this color because this company was putting in this dye, right? And one of the mills that did a lot of that was the Albion, of course, and they would dump it right into the canals and then it flushed out into the river. All right, now, with time, they added an extra section toward the front that made the proverbial Albion look, which was a great mansard top look. And in those front rooms, they were doing a lot of the calendar work, which is the work where you get the fineness of the paper down to the width that you need, and also where you put on the dyes that stick, and also you put on the stationaries embellishment towards the top. You might have a flower up there or a tree, and you might have put the lines itself. So that came a little bit later, that great Albion look. And probably about the 1880s that came, about 15 years after it was originally made out. Okay, so a lot of production was happening here, and then the Albion succeeded for years and years and years in the same way. And anything that expanded from there was side rooms, and there was a lot of side rooms off of those areas where they had the machinery. There were rooms for fixing things up, for getting the engine rooms very well, bleach rooms, for instance, and constantly this mill was changing.
Now, quickly before we continue with the rest of our interview, just to fill our listeners in, if you want to find out more information or sign up for any of his various tours, you can check out his website at holyokecanaltour.org. And there he has both videos of the various stops along each tour and also past and present photos of the historical sites throughout as well. And if you're interested in setting up a private tour, you can email him directly at bobcat4214, capital B, at yahoo.com. And they are perfect for fun, educational outdoor activities for the whole family or for your group parties, especially those special occasions and get-togethers. And they are also good just for getting outdoors for the day. So getting back to our interview, what products were made at the Albion?
Okay, now remember they're most famous for putting dyes on the paper, but they're also very popular for putting very smooth face to the paper. The reason for the color paper is for nice writing paper, blue, pink, green, whatever you wanted. They also made fancy cardboard and card to put inside of fancy clothes to keep its form before it's sold. So a collar board, all right, or a cardboard to hold the shirt in place. And on very fancy ones like a silk shirt, they'd make the board itself have a very smooth cloth face to it. You would actually feel on the cardboard like it was a piece of cloth, but actually it was just holding the silk in place to make it structured, hold its form, and make it a great presentation for people buying it. So once in a while, they still do that with certain shirts. And since there was a lot of fabric mills in Holyoke, this was a great place. It had fine paper, and it had paper to hold fabric in place for the customer to look at. So the Albion was an incredible mill, a double mansard building architecturally, but its products were also incredible, and so many people know about the Albion. And most paper mills only employed maybe 50, 60 workers, The bigger ones, like Whiting, might have employed 500. This was a mill that employed 300, which is great for a specialty mill. And so, sadly,
What happened to the Albion?
sadly, the back wall about 12 years ago, over the year 2023, collapsed during a violent windstorm, almost to the grade of a hurricane wind. The back wall fell. And then in another storm only about 7 years ago, the side wall fell. And so the owner wanted to fix it up, but it turned out that it was just too much. All right, so that's what I always say. If someone that really sells products or makes products is inside a mill, then that mill probably be fixed. But it was vacant and two walls were collapsed, and so he could find no reason to fix it up. So sadly, about 5 years ago, it was taken down. It was probably the best looking paper mill in Holyoke. Thank you for listening to the Albion.
And thank you, Robert, for educating us on your tours. And we want to thank our listeners for tuning in. And you can also tune into a large selection of our other podcasts and much more at his website. Again, that's holyokecanaltour.org. And again, you can email him directly for private tours or to inquire about anything else at bobcat4214, capital B, at yahoo.com.